All right. It looks like we are going live. And so we're going to
No,
take just a minute. Huh?
I like the little live button in the corner over there. See that? You see the live with the
Right.
counter? Oh,
Right.
that's going to keep us. That's going to keep us. That's not going to keep us anything.
Who are we kidding, right? Who are we
No,
kidding?
it's
Okay.
just going to show us how long we've been going.
I wonder if I can go over here. Let me go over here and see. Okay. Got to turn that volume down. We don't want double. So if folks would just bear with us for just a minute, I'm going to try to see if I can. And I'm getting a little bit of.
Yeah, where's it
I'm
coming
getting a
from? I
little
wonder.
reverb there.
Is it from?
Okay, it did let me do that. Why? Are you hearing that?
What is that?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
It
So the
sounds
good
like
news
in the
is,
old days when you had. Oh, that's going to be hard right there.
I know, right? So
That's
a
going to be
couple of
hard. It sounds to me like the old days when we used to do the deal where, like, you get on the phone and, like, for some reason you could hear somebody else, like who do you hear that? Like you're hearing somebody else's conversation. Remember that?
right, exactly. I am going to go to Twitter. Okay, we're live on Twitter, bro.
That's awesome.
So there's going to be a little bit of something here we're going to have to work through. So just bear with us for just a minute, folks. We're trying to figure a few things out. I'm going to go to Twitter and retweet. We are also. Oh, what is that, bro?
So I'm
Are
off
you?
on my
Is your phone on?
I'm off. It's off. My volume's all the way off. Is yours?
It is. I wonder if so. My volume's off on
And
Twitter.
I'm off on my
I'm gonna,
computer.
okay.
People are like, what are they doing?
Testing.
They've been doing this for a
Testing.
year.
I know. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Okay. I think maybe it's gone. Okay. I think it's gone. I think the echo's. I
Yeah,
think the echo's gone.
it's
I don't
gone.
know. We'll just act like it's gone. We'll just make it up. So, bro. So this is cool, man. We'll talk about this in just a minute.
Yeah.
But are you able to see on the right hand screen of yours the chat in Restream? Can you see that?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. I had to go out of, I had it on full. Yeah. Yeah.
So the good news is
Did someone have their sound?
people
Yeah.
can watch on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, and they can comment. And we are able to do all of the comments in one location, bro. How about that?
That is so amazing.
So I don't know how that's going to affect some of the algorithms with Facebook and the views and all that kind of
So
stuff, but we'll
awesome.
deal with it.
I just posted it. I just posted it on a church that invited me. I'm like, hey, you invited me. Like it was a church that invited me. So I
That's right. That's
posted it's a
exactly
church.
right.
I don't even know. I don't even know who
All
they
right.
are.
The
That's
good
part
news,
of it. You
hey,
invite me, I get on your.
that's right. We got it. We got the ticker. We got the timer, so we'll know exactly what's going on. So it's gonna be a good day. Are you ready to roll, bro?
As ready as I'll ever be.
So we will just so for those that have jumped on here before we're officially recording, we are doing a new service. We're doing it on Restream, so it is available on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, which is amazing, which is awesome. There is the one thing that we've noticed, Ken, and we'll have to kind of work through this and try to figure this out. But there's a little bit of latency, so there may be a couple times where we talk over each other and whatever. So we'll just have to work through it.
I'll put my hand up. Hey,
Gotta go to
teach.
the bathroom. Gotta go to the bathroom.
That's so good.
Do that. All right. Are you ready to roll?
Let's go.
Yeah, people can share and retweet and put the information out. So just saying. So, all right, here we go. Let's
Would
get
you?
rolling.
Would you guys? Come on.
Would
Chad
you?
Holly just said, ha ha, ha ha, ha ha. Come on, bro. What's all the ha haing about?
Number one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Bathroom.
Gotta go to the bathroom.
That's true.
All right, here we go.
Share it, everybody.
Let's get ready to rock and roll. Here we go.
Let's go.
All right. So we'll do the countdown. 3. That didn't work. Sorry, I couldn't help that. Woo. Okay. Let's try that again. Here we go. And we'll go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mobilized Church Podcast. This is Chris Dillingham alongside my big brother, Ken Dillingham Jr. the third. It's a beautiful day today, Ken. And hey, today is a landmark day for the Mobilized Church Podcast, bro.
Yeah. Next level.
We are going next level right now. We are streaming live, recording this live, and it's streaming on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. So now you can just get this beautiful picture on 3 different locations. How about that?
This beautiful picture, he says. Woo!
We
What
have
a beautiful thought I am thinking.
faces made for podcasts, is what I'm saying.
Okay, it's true.
So we are pumped about that, man. And we've experienced some technical issues over the last few weeks, and we apologize about that. Trying to grow, trying to get better and improve. And so trying a new service. We'll see how this goes. There are a couple of technical glitches, but we will get it figured out, Ken. We're going to nail it down.
Here's what's so beautiful. We have so what I'm doing is I'm reading your lips, and I'm watching to see when you stop talking, so that I'm like, rather than listening for the audio, there is a slight, just, I don't know, how much would you say? Like, is it maybe a little over a second?
Yeah, right at about a second. I was reading online,
Delay.
and it said there may be like up to a 2-second delay. So there's a little bit of a delay. So I look normal. I think it's you. So I don't know.
Well, so we're going to do that. And if there's a normally what we do is we talk over each other perfectly.
Yeah.
Today it might not be so. Yeah.
It might be a little
We'll
crazy,
figure it
but
out.
we'll get there. We'll get it done. We'll get it figured out. And hopefully this provides some opportunities for some others to join us on platforms that we previously had not been available on. So that's exciting, and we're looking forward to a great conversation. The other good thing is there's the ticker right in front of our face, so we know exactly how long we've been going. So we can't really avoid it today.
It's on your head right now. I can't look at you without seeing. We've been on here for 8 minutes and 27 seconds.
That's right.
But Hummel, did you see Hummel said the video feed does look clearer than normal?
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
I think it's going to be good, man. I think this is going to be a good thing for us, and so we're excited about it. People that are watching, they can go and share on Facebook, retweet it on Twitter, and whatever you do on YouTube. I don't know. You can do something on YouTube, but I don't know what the terminology is, but you can do it. You can help us out.
Link it to Instagram.
There you go. Subscribe. You can definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel. That would be a help, right?
Well, that is true. No, this is actually you talk about affecting the algorithm. Oh yeah. This is going to affect the algorithm. And the cool thing about it is I think with Restream, I was reading, or somebody was telling me, that you can actually take the master feed or whatever it is, and you can just put that in your link on the web page. So like on our podcast page, you just put the link in on the web page, and
Yep.
Right?
Yep, exactly. So next level, brother. Next level. Come on.
Algorithm.
Yeah. All right. We are ready. We just went Hodge twins on that one. Yeah.
I did hear that. Yeah.
So So somebody like, who's that? What that is?
We're giving away a white Jeep Wrangler Matchbox car. Yeah.
All right, man. We better get rolling. The ticker's ticking.
Okay. All right.
So
All right.
it's we
Let's go.
gotta get going here. And so today we want to talk about, and I'm gonna really let you are the idea creator, man. You're the content creating machine. So today, the topic that we really want to kind of dive into and address.
Come
Dude,
on.
did you see Carrie Hodge? Carrie Hodge is on here.
Carrie Hodge.
What are the odds,
Hodge is
man?
like the Hodge twins. Bring it. That's awesome.
That
That
is
is
so cool,
awesome.
man. What are
God
the
bless
odds
you,
of
Carrie
that
Hodge.
timing, man?
Hey, that dude was actually, if he was our brother growing up, it would be the
Brother
Hodge. It
from
would be the
another mother.
triplets.
You better believe it.
For
Exactly
real.
right, man.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
so today
Love that dude.
what we want to talk about is this. We want to talk about that we understand that the role and responsibility of the church is to it's biblically, right? We know from Ephesians chapter 4, the biblical perspective is that we have the responsibility for the perfecting of the saints for the equipping of the work of the ministry, right?
Right.
And one of the things we've talked about a lot is how that in far too many instances that church events, church activities, programs, all of that kind of stuff, the church, the building, the organization has become kind of the epicenter of missional activity versus the
Very true.
Jesus model, which is kind of training, creating, making disciples that make disciples, and then kind of sending them out
Right.
to do the mission. So kind of the title of what we're going to talk about today is the church is the equipper of the mission versus the church's epicenter of the mission. So just kind of set that up for you, Ken. Why don't you launch us into our conversation and discussion today?
Awesome. Well, I think as we look at, the way Jesus created the movement, Jesus came to this world to there's a lot. We just came through Easter, Resurrection Sunday, right? 2 days ago. And Jesus created this more, it was more than, I'm gonna say it like this. It was more than just simply Jesus creating a new version of the law or the Old Testament. It was more than Jesus doing some new kind of thing. He was literally introducing a New Testament. It's brand new. And so as Jesus comes into the Old Testament context, from that launching what will become the New Testament, the New Covenant, it's so amazing to me that when we watch this, that we see how it was that Jesus created a movement. And it wasn't like Jesus came in and said, I'm going to amass followers, or I'm going to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah,
this
right.
is really important. I mean, he had followers, right? And there were multitudes, and he fed multitudes, with fishes and loaves. And we know all these stories. And the Sermon on the Mount, there were a lot of people that were there. But I think it's important for us to recognize that what Jesus was doing was he was literally creating a movement that would outlast him. He knew that he was going to die on the cross. He knew that he was going to leave this world. And so I think it's really important as we look at the movement that Jesus created to recognize that if we're going to, and by the way, let me add this preface that I don't think that we can just simply slough it off as saying, well, dismiss it by saying, well, it was a different culture, it's a different era, it's a different time, whatever. I believe that it's important for us to really look at this and say, no, Jesus understands human relationship. Jesus understands the context of community. Look, there's a lot of stuff that's changed by technology, but there's nothing that's changed. I mean, like for example, Jesus's first miracle was at a marriage supper.
Right.
Hello.
Right.
We're still having marriages. We're still we're still having community. We're still having banquets. We're still having get-togethers. We still have neighbors. He's taught all these kinds of things. So the essential building blocks of community the essential building blocks of relationship and of creating something that ripples through those oikos, those spheres of influence, those relationships has not changed in over 2000 or in 2000 years. So what I want to do is today, I want to throw that back to you with this idea of saying, okay, well, what does it look like as Jesus creates this movement, and what can we learn, and how can we recreate an environment where Jesus took people, trained them, showed them how to do it, right? Jesus shows them how to do it. Then Jesus turns around and says, now I want you to go out and do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the way my brain works, which it is a scary place for sure, but the way that my brain works oftentimes is I look at, okay, what are the challenges or the issues or the problems related to that, right? And
Mhm.
then and
Yeah.
then and then kind of figure out the strategy or the true biblical perspective. How do we get back to the
Mhm.
true biblical perspective of what we're
Yeah.
supposed to be?
Is that the optimum, right? Is
Yeah.
that the optimum?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so
Yeah.
so as I kind of think this through, one of the first things that jumps to my mind, bro, is that kind of that old idiom that says, if it's everybody's responsibility, it's nobody's, right?
Very true.
So if you have a situation where there's an assumption, and there's been all kinds of sociological studies and psychological studies about, if you make it the responsibility of the community whole, what ends up happening is everybody makes an assumption that the other person is going to do it. The other person
Yeah.
is going to take care of it. The other person's going right, whatever it is. And so
Yeah. Somebody else has got it.
yeah, somebody else has got it. And so I think when you have the church organization at the center of missional, the epicenter, to use your term, the epicenter of missional activity, what ends up happening, I think one of the biggest challenges is you remove that individual responsibility, right? You take away
Very true.
you take away that individual's every believer's individual responsibility, the command that is given, the great commission to go and make disciples. So I think the foundational issue is that we lose that personal responsibility, and we make an assumption, well, somebody else is going to do it, or we assume that quote unquote ministry is going to do it. And so I think that is probably, if we're looking at just like the biggest challenges and difficulties that come along with that, I think that's kind of the first place that my mind goes to, that we have to start at.
Man, so good. Well, and I think that's so as you as you sort of dive off into that idea, I think what you've done is you've kind of created a contrast. You've contrasted between what it is that what did the church look like in the first century? What's the church look like today? And I believe that I believe it really isn't difficult to say that in many ways the church is um, identifiably different, and that may be a good thing, that may be a bad thing, right? I mean, in other words, it's going to be different because um there were some differences, like for example in I think when we look at the or excuse me, I'm sorry, when we look at the early church in Jerusalem, there was a very strong eldership order in the church
Mm,
there.
right.
And I've done a lot of study. I've done a lot of study on that, and I think that eldership order that we see in the Jerusalem church was a lot more culturally centered than what we find the Apostle Paul. I don't find the Apostle Paul reproducing that kind of environment that we see in the Jerusalem church. It looks like the Jerusalem church has a huge amount of elders, and the elders are the biblical definition of elder sort of changed as Paul missionary journeys were effective in, like for example in what we would know now as Europe and the areas of Greece, and Thessalonica and Philippi and Corinth and
Sure.
Ephesus and so on, that there were elders, but there was this that the elders, they didn't have that same cultural foundation right, in the fabric of their culture of elders. And so what I'm saying is that the point that I'm making is that there are differences, there are nuances. The question then becomes, in these areas of, we're not necessarily saying how we do church. We're not necessarily saying, we need to go back and do it like they did, where they, it
Right.
was that this was their, we don't really have a good picture of how the New Testament did a church service. What we
Sure.
do have is a very clear picture of how they did mission and what was the expectation of individual believers as it related to doing the mission. So I think you've
And that's so
contrasted
good.
that well to at least give us to dive into that.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about, a lot of that. So I don't wanna necessarily dig into it, but I do think it's important that we at first at least acknowledge, that issue and that problem, and
Yep.
I don't think there's any argument against that. I think most pastors that we've talked to, you and I both evangelized for, a total of
Right.
almost 20 years, and just about every pastor that we came in contact with, the question became the same of how do I get people, engaged,
That's it.
right? And sometimes that was how do I get people teaching Bible studies, or how do I get people whatever. Ultimately what they're saying is, how do I get people engaged in the mission? And it wasn't because people are bad or wrong or whatever. I think it was a cultural thing that had been established and set, that you kind of, settle into, "This is how we do it." There are certain people that are gonna do the mission. My responsibility is to be a good volunteer, to be faithful, to show up, to do the things that I'm supposed to do, but when it comes to missional activity, that's not really my thing. I'm not really that kind of personality. I'm not outgoing.
I'm not an evangelist.
Exactly. And I think that has become a major hindrance on the mission. So, what we wanna really focus on today is not addressing the problem, not addressing the issue, because we've talked a lot about that. What we wanna talk about is you made a great point in one of our text groups, Ken, that I think is really critical, really important, and that is that there is a tendency sometimes, we see this often, that when you identify an issue, or you identify something that maybe is not working at optimum level, like you mentioned, then there's a
Mm,
tendency to think, well, the answer must be, well, let's blow it all up. Let's swing on the pendulum to the opposite end, and go completely opposite. And what we want to talk about today
mm.
is no, there's a model that's been presented biblically to us that will produce what we desire, which is that flipping of the switch to get it from the church being the epicenter to being the people being the epicenter.
The good a good question that somebody could ask if somebody's looking at this or listening today, and maybe you haven't listened to some of our previous podcasts or whatever, or maybe you have, but it's still a relevant question, and that is, the question is, do you want or need missionaries or volunteers? I think
Yeah.
I think that will help someone identify kind of what it is that that's driving the whole thing. We talk about the operating system. So as you just mentioned, as you think through, like, okay, are we going to, do we take the church and just blow it up? Do we just say, man, like for example, a lot of times we look at, as you just mentioned, we say, man, how do I get people activated? How do I get them out of the pew? How do I get people? I mean, we heard this over and over and over. It's probably the number one thing that we both heard as evangelists is, how do you get people out of the pew? How do you get them activated? How do you get them living on mission?
100%.
And I think that the answer to that is that you have to cut off the power switch to the thing that's causing the problem.
Mm,
That's why I asked the question. That's why I asked the question, do you want or need missionaries or volunteers? Now,
right.
the big now this is, I think this is what I'm going to throw it back to you right here. But
Oh boy.
as we think through this, as we think through this, when we say cut off the power to the thing that's causing the problem, well, then if you're saying, well, okay, so the corporate church with all of its structures and strategies and all of its programs and its events and its whatever that's supposed to quote unquote be doing the mission, right? So you're saying, are you doing these incredible strategies? Are you doing these incredible things? And you're saying, now we got this great plan, we've got these things coming up, and we just need you to plug in and help and volunteer. That will tell you at your church what's driving the mission.
Sure.
If you say, we're gonna do things, we're gonna do events or whatever, but we're gonna use those as a platform to train people.
Yes.
We're gonna do that as a platform to teach people how to do mission on their own. So what would happen if a church would say, rather than saying, well, we've co-opted the mission, we're going to do better than you can do it in your own personal life. We've got more money, we've got more people, we got better facilities, we're going to do it better. We're going to do these big, amazing things. We're going to have a concert. We're going to have whatever. And just all we need you to do is just get people to show up. And wow, we're going to reach our community. And we've got a lot of pastors that are looking at it going, dude, I've been doing that for a lot of years now. We're not reaching our community. So what
Absolutely.
I need to figure out how to do is, how do I get the people out of the pew? And you say, well, you've created a volunteer culture. Now you're going to have to create a missionary culture. And now you're going to have to move from being the church being the epicenter of the mission to the church being the equipper of the mission.
So good, man. So good. I think, years ago when I was evangelizing, I did a lot of training on how to teach a home Bible study, right? And I would always ask the question, like, why do you think most people don't teach home Bible studies? And without question, the number one answer was, well, I don't feel like I have enough knowledge. I don't feel equipped to be able to do it. I think a lot of people that really have a desire to do it, want to do it, they just don't feel like that they're capable of doing it. And so again, I've mentioned this before, but a lot of times what we do is we preach sermons and we talk a lot about the responsibility and, like, you need to get a burden, you need to get passion, you need to, and really kind of heap this heavy burden on people, like, this is what you need to do. And there are a lot of people, I think, they're like, I know that's what I need to do. I want to do it. I'm just not 100% sure how to go about it. I've lost a lot of my relationships and connections outside the church. I don't know where do I even start? What do I do? And there are some people that are just by nature, we've talked about gifted evangelists. There's some people that are by nature just entrepreneurial. There's some people that by nature are gifted evangelists that are just go-getters. They're going to make it happen and go do it. But I think if we're honest, I think that's the minority of people that are sitting in our church pews, and guilt, Jay Jones commented on there, the guilt motivator, the guilt is not going to move people from that place. It might for a short season. There might be a little bit of a move for a moment where people are like, okay, I'm going to do this. And because I feel bad and I know that I need to do something, but that doesn't create lifestyle. And so the issue is, Ken, how do we fill the gap between that place of, like, I know that I have the burden responsibility to live on mission, but not just live on mission, but to be engaged with my community, be embedded in my community, build relationships, all of that kind of stuff. That gap between, I know I need to do this, but I don't feel qualified. I don't feel the ability to do that. We've not really created, so in the business world, one of the things that we talked a lot about was doing a gap analysis, right? Gap analysis is evaluating where we are versus where you want to be, and then establishing very clear steps to bridge that gap from where you are to where you want to be. And I think we have to have that evaluation, that the truth is that in most cases, I would say, the church is the epicenter of missional activity. But where we want to get to is having an army that is living on mission every day, that's skilled and trained, and I say skilled and trained. I want to be careful how I say that. I'm not saying that from like a programmatic standpoint, and I'm not saying that from
Right.
a like a fake or whatever. I'm saying they're trained and have developed the abilities to be able to build true, deep, meaningful relationships like Jesus did, right? So we've got to develop this. We've got to develop the bridge of how do we get there. And I think Jesus gave us the model, which is what you presented from the very get go, of training up a group of men. We know he had the 12. He also had others that were disciples that followed him, right? There were 120 in the upper room, and that 120 turned the world upside down. Why? Because of the investment of Jesus, not in creating an institutional culture, but in creating this missional culture.
So good, man. Yeah, I think so many churches have an elaborate system of training volunteers. They have people come on board, and they've got a full
Yeah.
workflow of how they train volunteers. Our process that we use at the church that I pastor is we just use a process that says, I do, you watch, I do, you help, you do, I help, you do, I watch, and then you do. Right.
Yeah.
So it's a relational, hands-on training context. Much of our volunteer training is that kind of thing. It's interesting because if you think about how we train people to be like part of our children's ministry, train people to be a part, we don't just give them a handbook and say, learn the information and, learn the policies and procedures and the information and you'll be good. Strangely, that's often how we teach people or train people to be missionaries.
Yeah.
We give
Right.
them here's how to teach a Bible study. Well, but when you train them to volunteer in a children's ministry context, you take them into the classroom and you say, here, we're going to set you up with our best Bible study, or I'm sorry, our best Sunday school teacher. And I want you to watch. I want you to learn, right? I do, you watch. And then
Yeah.
they're going to let you do a little bit and they're going to give you a piece and you do the story or whatever. What would happen if we had an environment where we had these kind of people who had been trained personally, that we unleashed those people to say, now you come along with me. And I'll tell you something funny, Chris. It was last week. Brother David Bernard, who's the General Superintendent of the United Pentecostal Church, he tweeted something. He says, an evangelist focuses on proclaiming the gospel to the lost. Some are traveling preachers. Some remain in an area indefinitely. Partnering with a pastor, right? Partnering with a pastor to win souls and fulfilling roles as outreach director or Bible study coordinator. And my question would be, okay, you're showing us what it looks like in an institutional context. What does that look like in an organic context? Right. In other words,
Right.
what would that look like if you didn't say, here's how an evangelist fits into the institutional corporate culture of the church.
Yeah.
What would that look like if that were somebody who basically
I
was
see where you're going here.
right, embedded in the church, who said, look, you may have this gifting in yourself, right? We can't look at it and say, the church has got 1 million people, but it's only got 30 evangelists and it's got 500 pastors and it's got. We have to believe that there's more gifting of the evangelists in the church than just those people that are traveling around preaching sermons. And the point that I'm making is not to discredit what Brother Bernard said, because there's a limitation in how long you can say something in Twitter. But what I'm saying is, what would it look like in an environment where someone who had the gift as an evangelist would be able to take people along and say, here, come with me. And because that's what Ephesians 4 says. for the
Absolutely.
training of and equipping of the church. So what would it look like rather than just simply say, okay, we're going to train you to be volunteers, and then we're going to let the people that are gifted to be evangelists and apostles do the mission? What would it look like? Which, by the way, I'm not saying that that's what he was saying in his text. I'm just simply saying,
Yeah.
if that's the mindset is, well, you come and volunteer and you fit into this, and then those people that God's gifted, will let them go do those things. What would happen if those people came in and said, we're going to help train you to do these things in real life, in real time?
And we know, bro, like if you've ever been on a job, I mean, a lot of skills that we've learned, we know that the way that we come about these skills is by the hands-on training, right? When I worked in the corporate world, I went through a training program. It was several weeks of training, but it was the model of what you said. It was, okay, I'm going to show you. As a matter of fact, one of my jobs in the corporate world was developing a training program for new
Uh,
hires. And so here's
wow.
so so here's what our process was. Our process was, okay, you're going to first come in, and the first 3 weeks we're just going to show you the things that you need to know and you need to know how to do. You're going to observe, you're going to watch, and then as we start moving through those 3 weeks, you get to the end of those 3 weeks, then you're going to start doing, right? And
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about what you did wrong, what you need to improve on, all of those kinds of things. And then the next 3 weeks is you're gonna do, and we're gonna observe, and then we'll coach you on the things that you're doing.
There you
And
go.
then the next 3 weeks, you're gonna do it on your own, and periodically we're gonna check in with you and see how you're doing. And then after those 9 weeks, you're basically on your own. You're doing your thing, and then clear strategy, follow up throughout. So I'm just saying, like, we know you don't.
Yeah. Evaluation, ongoing coaching. And if you've got a problem, come talk to us. Once they're
Exactly.
trained up, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so you don't sit somebody in a chair and say, okay, like you said, here's the handbook, here's the system, go figure it out, go how to go. And yet that's how we've treated the mission of, like, hey, just go do it. And I think talking about the pendulum swing, as I'm kind of talking through that, like exactly what you said. I think the challenge is, so Ken, how do we do this? How do we balance that pull between the institutional pull, that things just
Hmm.
kind of naturally, it's like a magnet. It's almost like we get sucked into kind of that institutional thinking, and then this other mindset. We don't swing way too far on the other end of the pendulum where we just blow it all up and whatever. But how do we kind of stay in that sweet spot? How do we stay in that central place where we have what you're saying? Like you said, you have a culture in your church of,
Hmm.
this is how investment and training works in developing missional believers, right? It's not like you're
Mhm.
just hoping that people catch it because it's cultural. You have a clear strategy, but how do you keep that from becoming institutional programmatic, I guess, is my question.
Yeah. Well, I think that for the first thing you have to do is sort of embrace this idea that our greatest missional opportunity doesn't happen one day a week. I
Yeah.
think it has to. I think we have to embrace this idea that our greatest missional opportunity. I was talking about. We were talking in our text group of some of the pastors that were journeying along this road and journeying and learning together. We have some pastors that we coach, and a learning cohort, and some peer influence cohorts that we do, and so one of those text groups we're talking this morning, and Elon Musk. We put a video out there where Elon Musk was talking about that one of the biggest mistakes that smart engineers do is optimizing things that shouldn't exist. And
Love
so
it.
so basically we had this discussion asking the question. I said, I put it out there and said, what are some things that we're optimizing that probably shouldn't exist, or things that really maybe don't really matter, or that in optimizing them they actually they rob the energy and maybe not just the impact, but the impetus that should exist, like you just said, on that
Yeah.
personal responsibility of doing the mission. So, so I think that it's really important to take a look at it and say, okay, look, don't blow up the church. You don't dismantle the church. You don't pull the plug on it and say, well, the problem is the organized church. That's not the way Jesus did it. No, the Bible said, by one Spirit, you're baptized into one body. Go look at it again and read the first few chapters of the book of Revelation, and you'll find Jesus addressing unto the angel of the church of. Okay. Jesus clearly Jesus is clearly establishing and speaking through the context of the local church. That's so biblical. I think that what we need to do then is to say that that as long as we're embracing a posture that says that the institutional organizational schematic of the church is, we do the mission, you bring the people, we'll present the gospel, we'll do, whatever.
Yeah.
I think that if we looked at it, and here's a perfect example from our text group. This is why I brought this up. In our text group, somebody said we had an Easter egg hunt yesterday. It was amazing. We have a discipleship culture that's being cultivated, and it's blossoming in our church. And what we found, that this was different than other events that we've done. Because in the past, we would do an event, and then the people would volunteer, and they put out the eggs, or they do the things, and they meet people, and they take down the cards, and they do the drawing or whatever the things that we do, and then go away and say, man, wasn't that a success? We had 500 people on our church property. We had whatever, but there were zero relationships developed. And I think that, so what I said, okay, now imagine if you use that energy from that success, which at the heart of it was, we're doing this to find out, to create relationships and to create spiritual conversations that identify disciplable people. What would happen if that energy and that success was used to say, okay, now what we're going to do is, rather than to have a single event at a single location, what would happen if we could take 25 of you next year and you have an Easter egg hunt in your neighborhood? What would happen if we could teach you through this and train you and say, now I want you to take this to your neighborhood or a park where maybe 3 or 4 or 5 families in the church live in this sort of a central park, and say, we're going to do that there, rather than to say, well, the church has to do that. The church has to do the event, and then the people come in and volunteer. What would happen if the church said, no, what we want to do is we want to actually propel people out into the mission field so that they're capturing the 6/7 of the week of missional opportunity. And rather than that event be something that the people volunteer to help, the church actually trains people to do those kinds of things where they live, work, and play.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love that. And Jay Jones, who is a beast, by the way, Jay is a beast. He said, a clarifying question: in what way can this program event system assist the members in living mobilized? I think that's a tremendous question. And I think that's kind of the heartbeat of cultural shift,
Thank you,
right?
bro.
Right. It's so
Good.
And so some of the conversations we've had in that text group, the winds have changed, WINS, the winds have changed for a lot of these pastors, to where, we oftentimes celebrate the number. Man, we had all these people show up and whatever. I made the statement to our team. We do a kind of a pre-service prayer meeting, and it's our Timothy and Lydia group, kind of our intentional mentoring program that we have, whatever. And I made the statement. I said, you know what? Here's the reality. The reality is, there are thousands and thousands of people that have come to our services. They've come to our dramas. They've come to our concerts. None of those things are wrong. None of those things are bad. They've come to those events, Ken, and they've walked out and said, dude, I've never felt anything like that in my life. I've never experienced anything like this in my entire life. And they never come back.
Right. And then you wonder, what's wrong? What's wrong?
Right. And
they said they've never felt anything like this yeah.
And I've often said, one of the biggest lies we've ever said is if we can just get them to the church, then we've got them. If that were the case, our churches would be filled up because we know how to get people to
Yeah.
come to the
Yeah.
services, and we do
Yeah.
have great services. We do have great church. We've got
And
anointed
nobody's
preaching and
questioning that,
singing.
are we?
We've got all of that. There's no doubt about that. And I said, but what is the difference? I can point to 10 examples in our church right now of people that are here today serving God on the discipleship journey, all of those kinds of things. They have all of that happening. Why? The difference was not, well, the service was so much better that day, or the preaching was so much better, the singing was so much better, whatever. You know what the difference was?
Mhm.
One thing. It was relationship. And so
That's it.
we can celebrate that we had a record crowd on Easter, but what happens the week after Easter? The
Yeah.
celebration, we should rejoice. I'm not saying that we should be negative. We should rejoice that, the house was full, opportunity. And you know what? Sometimes God uses that and it miraculously changes a life. But the truth is, what the win for many in our group and what we've been talking about, the win is how many opportunities were we able to build to find and build meaningful relationships, right?
Mm.
We took our
Yeah, so good.
this past Sunday, we took our 10 o'clock, which is our typically in our adult class, we do a forum. We call it First Things Forum, right? And we took that and we said, you know what we're going to do is we're just going to have a time where we don't have an adult session. Children will have their thing, youth will have their thing, but for adults, we're just going to come have coffee and donuts and hang out, whatever. Bro, our lobby was packed. It was jam
It's
packed.
amazing.
And it was people walking around, having conversations, having an opportunity to build relationships with people that they typically on Sundays only see them in passing, kind of wave at them and whatever. And I talked to several people when we looked at the clock and we're like, oh man, dude, like church is ready to start. How did it happen? How did it go by so quickly? Creating that space. To me, I'm thankful that we had a great crowd on Easter. I'm thankful that we had unbelievable church service. It was awesome, tremendous. But you know what, man? I went home and was like, thank God for the opportunities we had to build those connections, those relationships. Those are the things I
Mhm.
think are critical and important.
Yeah. Well, isn't it true that uh, really at the end of the day, the the thing that's going to make the difference is going to be, do they have a connect point? Um, the Bible tells us that there were certain Greeks that came to the disciples and said we would see Jesus. Um, I think that's important because the connect point was that apparently they had a relationship with the disciples over and over. The disciples were we see examples, right, where Jesus wasn't present in the situation, but they went to the disciples and said, would you give us access to the master? And I believe that I believe that that those connections are so crazily important. And to kind of hit to a little bit to Jay Jones's comment, and I think it is an important comment where he said, "In what ways can we utilize the clarifying question? In what way can event a program event system assist members in living mobilized?" I think this is one of the things, these primary things that we're talking about, is to say, what we're doing here. I think it is to first, to me, to create an environment where the people understand this isn't the epicenter of the mission. This is the title today, right? This isn't the
Yeah,
epicenter of the mission. You are.
right. There you go.
I
That's
think
the
I
key.
think yeah, I think if you can establish that in your local congregation, this place is not the epicenter of the mission. What happens here is not the epicenter of the mission. The epicenter of the mission is you. Why? Because there will be more saturation and there'll be more infiltration into the mission field on those 6 days of the week that you're out there, that you're living among the largest concentration that our church will ever experience, is going to happen on Monday, not Sunday.
Yeah.
We're going to come across a larger concentration of lost people who need God, So we've said it like this before. Okay, so Jay's responded. I asked him to respond, and we'll talk about it online. He said organizations don't win souls; people do. The church organization should exist to equip and mobilize the members. The members don't exist to support and empower the organization. 100%, Jay. So good, bro. That's exactly what we're hitting at, because I think it's
Spot
so
on.
important for us to say, spot on, right? Organizations. Here's what organizations do. Okay. I was a member of a green country club. Okay. You know what they did? They tried to, they needed members,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
They needed members. So what can organizations do? Organizations can enlist members, but the mission, which is a whole, we've talked about all that, so I'm not going to go down that road. But the mission is what happens when the people of God are living out six days a week. And what we talked about earlier about when John Hummel mentioned, he said, we had this incredible Easter egg hunt, and there was a lot of connections or whatever. Here's what's beautiful. What if you say, look, this year we're going to do this event here on the church grounds. We want to take 20 to 25 people who would like to do this in your neighborhood next year.
Yeah.
And we want you to walk through the process. We're going to show you where we bought the stuff. We're going to show you how we did it. We're going to show you how we organized it. We're going to show you how we, got people here. We're going to get you on the team. And here's what we're going to do. This is a training ground for you to take this to your neighborhood next year. Now, obviously, yes, again, we're not wanting to be event centric, but I'm just to answer his question, to answer Jay Jones specifically, how do we use events and these kinds of things and the work of the organized church to push people to be able to do this on their own, to train them to do it on their own? I think this is a perfect example. And then eventually what will happen is they'll start doing it in their daily lives, in the natural rhythm of life, not just, taking the bounce house to their home and doing a neighborhood deal. Nothing wrong with those kinds of things. That's a great way to mobilize. That's a great way to meet your neighbors. That's a great way to meet people that you haven't ever met before, right? That's a great way to expand your oikos. But wow, what happens when people start doing this in the natural rhythms of life? That's where the magic happens.
There you go. And I think the question, I love what Jay said there about, the church organization should exist to equip and mobilize members. Members don't exist to support and empower the organization. I think the question we have to ask
100%.
as leaders, right? As leaders and as pastors, I think we have to ask the question, what are we doing to genuinely equip and to empower and to mobilize believers? Right? That's that. So that goes to the heartbeat of what we're saying. A lot of what we've done is because the church has been the epicenter. So what we've done is we've equipped and we've trained people how to support the institution.
Volunteers. Right? Like we just said earlier, we have elaborate training systems for our institutional volunteer, departmental volunteer system. What about training missionaries?
Exactly. So I think the real question we've got to get to is, what are we doing? So I want to throw it to you, Ken. And I know this is a lot of what we do with the Dillingham group, but our own personal journey, right? This is our own personal journey.
Come on.
Okay. We recognize, I think most people recognize, yes, we've got to do a better job of equipping and empowering the believers to do the work of the mission. And not in a way of like, we're offloading it to you. We don't want to do it, so we're offloading it to you. But from a way of this is the place, bro. This is a place of fulfillment. This is a place where you're on mission with Jesus. You're co-laborers with him. So my question is in just a real quick, because I know we're running up against the clock here. Just in a real quick, could you throw out just kind of a real quick Reader's Digest encapsulated thing of practically what are some things that we can do? And you mentioned you do or I do, you watch, that kind of deal. But real practically speaking, like how do we truly train, equip, mobilize believers to feel confident in the ability to engage in the mission? First, it starts with building relationships, and then to be engaged
Right.
in the mission. How do we practically do that? What's a little snippet that maybe today there's a pastor that's listening
Yeah.
or watching that might be like, yeah, man, I'm on board with that. I just don't know how to get there. What are some things that we could talk about that might create a little bit of interest? And then, maybe get in touch with us
Mhm.
and we could talk to you about
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
journey.
I think, okay, so first of all, I think that it's that's incredibly important to empower people. I believe it's incredibly important to say the the innovation of the Holy Spirit working in the lives of individual believers where their mission field exists is going to be far more strategically innovative than the best and brightest that you could ever amass to create a strategic plan at your local assembly. I think I think to
Yes.
cause people to understand, right? He says when Jesus said, "Don't take any thought for what you'll say in that hour, but the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost will give you the words." I think that if we say to people, folks, some of you are just waiting for the Holy Spirit to innovate through you and to show up through you and in your lives. And so we want to give you the confidence to do that. The way you start is what we call the map to multiplication. And basically what you have to do is you have to have a process to move people from membership to mobilization. This is a key, this is a man, a major
Massive,
shift.
massive
Mo-
shift.
moving moving people from feeling like their contribution to the congregation is their membership into a mobilized perspective, saying God wants you out where lost people are. And then as they begin to develop those relationships, then we're going to begin to teach them how to then bring Jesus into those relationships through spiritual conversations, through identifying disciplable people. How do I know somebody's disciplable? They're willing to let Jesus change what they care about. How do I know that? That's part of what the training is about. Then as they begin to be able to introduce Jesus into those relationships that they have created in the process of moving from members to mobilization, then from mobilization to missional living, and then as they begin to identify disciplable people, they begin to work in those relationships to create this beautiful deep transformation. That transformation becomes relatable to the people in their world. It becomes obvious to the people in their world. They see the change
Yes.
that's happened, and then all of a sudden they begin to ask questions, and that person now begins to coach them to reach their world and their family and their friends. And when that happens 3 and 4 and 5 generations deep, you've got multiplication on your hands. And that's exactly what we want to teach pastors to do.
Man, that's so good. And what I love about this whole thing is, this is not a do church our way or whatever, or this is you
Nope.
can you can contextualize this into any
Mm.
context, any
Yeah.
demographic,
Big church, small church, right? Urban, rural. It's,
rural,
yeah.
100%. And this has been the journey we've been on of taking small groups of people and walking them through this process of being the disciple that allows Jesus to transform them. And Sherry Goodermont made a great point. She said, "Loosing the saints will transform the saint in real time, and relationship
Mm.
will affect the people in their journey." And that's so true. I think one of the biggest things that we've got to get back to is getting people to experience transformation consistently in their lives. And
Man.
a big part of that happens when you're engaged in the mission, when you're walking with people on the journey and they're confronted with issues and they're confronted with, emotions and anger and anxiousness and whatever. It confronts places in your life where you recognize and realize, you know what, there's a place of unbelief there. What's the area of unbelief? And you start experiencing that
Mhm.
transformation. And this is why we're so passionate about it, bro, is because it brings renewed vitality, and it makes your relationship vibrant again, where it might become stale if it's just institution centered, if it's just service centered, event oriented.
Mhm.
it loses its vibrancy over time. It becomes just like everything else in the world versus relationship driven, transformation driven creates
and
that vibrancy.
and people become consumers, and they become experiential, and everything's built on their experience. And it does, man, getting involved in the mission. I mean, Jesus basically plainly said, look, you, this has to happen in your life. This has to be something that you adopt into your own life. Maybe a pastor might look at this and say, yeah, but wouldn't, man, isn't that going to be messy? Sure. I mean, church life is messy. It's just, which messy do you want? Do you want messy with massive multiplication potential, or do you want messy with minimal additional potential? The choice is just which kind of messy you want.
It's exactly right. Exactly right. So I think, man, great conversation today, Ken. I think we've got to be intentional. I think one of my big takeaways from the discussion conversation today is we've got to be intentional about this
Yeah,
investing into people. And so we have an advantage because we know that the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit, is a missional spirit. And so
that's it.
you get people filled with the Spirit consistently and staying full of his Spirit. There's going to be a missional impetus, there's going to be a missional drive anyway.
Mhm.
So we
Mhm.
have that advantage. You start putting just a little bit of push and training and development and intentional leading the way Jesus did. We have within us the potential for massive multiplication. It takes time. It's not, nobody's saying that it's going to happen overnight. And that's one of our biggest challenges is
Mhm.
we judge everything. Somebody said something the other day about a church planter that, the reason that they're small is because they've been small minded. They haven't grown in 2 years because they're small minded. And my initial thought was, man, you don't know all the things that are going on in that. You don't know what's happened,
So
and
that's, yeah.
right, and in 2 years, I mean, that's
Mm.
so it so that becomes our whole view of like, man, we gotta do the things that get it done quick versus the things that Jesus showed us. Jesus was willing to wait 3.5 years, right? I mean, imagine how many
Yeah.
people passed into eternity under the old covenant in 3.5 years, but he waited because he knew that there had to be training and there had to be investment. He had to put this into the hands, empowerment of the individuals, not the institution, and they who turn the world upside down. And so great conversation today, Ken. Anything you want to leave us with?
No, I just think that's an amazing point that you say right there is that's the thing that we've wanted to try to capture is something that's scalable. We want something that
Yes.
works in a church of 50, and it works in a church of 5,000, it works in a church of 5. It works in a church plant that's 1 year old, it works in a church that's 100 years old. you know, um, I think this is the reason why we quote so often that what the church growth gurus have told us over the years by observing the fastest growing churches in the world, that they've told us that these things are a result or a byproduct of doing these kinds of things, which results in church in a box, do church our way. It's focus, heightens its focus on the institution, it heightens its focus on the church as the epicenter of the mission. And I think that what's beautiful about what you just said is that church plants are at such a disadvantage in this sense that if they're told, hey, go and do these things, some of the things that they're told to go do aren't scalable. They don't have the human resources, the financial resources to do something that's so amazing and attractional that people are just going to walk through the door. Now, we believe that there's prayer and the power of God and, whatever. But, our old model has kind of been, drop them off in the city, find a place to go have church and start having services if you just do it with your family. And
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
obviously the pitfalls of that are clear. But in this kind of a sense, you could go into a city, you could go and you could create relationships, you could mobilize, begin to build relationships, build these multiplication groups, these, that go on into multiple generations. And before you even have your launch service, you could have, 30, 40, 50 people and have a multiplication engine already. And that works in a brand new church plant, and that works in a church of 500.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, man, great conversation today. Something we're super passionate about, and we appreciate everybody jumping on, whether that was on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. And I think, Ken, so far, I think we made it out of here without too many technical glitches with our
Yeah.
new using Restream today, and so it worked out really, really, really well. And appreciate the chat, the comments, conversation, discussion, engagement. We always appreciate that so very much. So thank you for your patience today as we work through a little bit of latency, but we'll get that nailed down, bro. We'll get that for you. We did good
I
today.
was watching. Yeah, I was reading your lips. I would watch and I'd be like, I think we figured it out
Well, we
eventually.
nailed it. We nailed it. Because we are, as you say, we are trained professionals.
It's true.
I don't know
Don't
where
try
we were
this at home.
trained. I don't know where we were trained, but we're trained professionals. All right, everybody. Thank you for jumping on and joining us today. We appreciate that as always. You can help us out by liking on all the rating us on all the podcast platforms. You can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter, and you can subscribe on Twitter. Make sure I get all the language just exactly right. We are on Instagram as well, so you can help us
Yeah.
out with that. And we look forward to coming back to you next Tuesday around 10 a.m. And looking forward to another great discussion next week. Until then, go live mobilized. God bless everybody.